You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, well, and how you living? It is another week. We are getting through it, not surviving, but we are thriving. And before we get started, I just wanted us to take a moment to let's just breathe into this moment, tuning into this podcast, taking a couple deep breaths in, breathing in, breathing out one more time, breathing in. And let's just be present to the moment. August is Wellness Month. It's National Wellness Month. And if you haven't been tuning in, I have been talking about all month the inner critic, because I just feel like that's such an important part of what holds us back from really living hella well. And so the first week we talked about, where does the inner critic come from? Last week we talked about the trance of unworthiness, which I won't lie, my own podcast did trigger me a little bit. And this week I want to talk about how do we befriend our inner critic? And I say befriend, or how do we work with our inner critic versus against it? Because I see all these articles, people are like, 9 ways to silence your inner critic or to shut it down. And the reality of the inner critic ain't going nowhere. Until you get rid of your last breath, the inner critic is not going anywhere. It is there. It is your lifetime partner. There is no divorce. Maybe there's some separations, but there is no divorce. You are together forever. And so keeping that in mind, I'm just like, silencing it ain't going to work. It's almost like trying to have a conversation or try to be rational or have a rational debate with someone's drunk. We've all been there. That's not going anywhere. Or trying to debate a child who is persistent, or a father who is really old and really is persistent as well on their way is the right way. You're not going to go anywhere. The stronger that you fight against the inner critic, the stronger it's going to get. So why why resist the inner critic? So my whole thought process is stop fighting it and let's see how we can work together. How can we befriend the inner critic? And so I came up with a couple ways that I feel like have worked. Some of them are a little bit not conventional, but others I'm like, let's just try it, because silencing it, ignoring it isn't helping. So why don't we try to befriend it? So the first thing I would like to say, and that I have used, is making sure that you name it and acknowledge it. And what do I mean by that? So give your inner child a name. Call it, and I keep saying inner child, I mean inner critic. Yo, have I been saying inner child the whole time? If I haven't, whoopsie, I mean inner critic. Because I'm so often talking about inner child. Inner critic, give your inner critic a name. Whether it's inner critic or it could be, Becky, Karen, because those Karens are terrorists, and then your inner critic is a terrorist. Shout out to Beyonce. I am still on this Renaissance movement. Can't get past the first couple of songs. I get on a loop, but I digress. Give your inner critic a name. Give it a specific name. So whether it's a real name, it's inner critic, or give it a name like the pleaser, the controller, the judge. Whatever you do, giving it a name helps you decipher between it being you and another person or another entity. So giving it another name, it's not you that's saying it. And that also helps you to start then recognizing the voice. So when you hear the inner critic, the pleaser, the controller, Becky, Karen, or whatever name you're giving it, talking to you, you're able to hopefully start recognizing the difference between your voice and the inner critic's voice. Because it's really different hearing me say, Danielle saying, I think I'm fat, and thinking the inner critic is suggesting that I'm fat. And I'm going to say that again. So thinking that me, Danielle Denise Washington, I don't know why I gave my full name, but we just did. Me, Danielle, saying that I'm fat versus me thinking the inner critic is suggesting that I'm fat. And when you're able to decipher the two, it just makes things differently. You come at it differently. And the other part of that is once you've been able to name your inner critic, you're able to start recognizing the voice, start acknowledging it. Acknowledging it in the way of, being real passive with it, or maybe not even being passive aggressive with it. Like, oh, okay, that's so cute. Pleaser, I see you trying to, make things bad for me. That's cute. Nice try. Not today. Oh, thank you, inner critic. No, I'm good. Treat your inner critic like a telemarketer or a spam message. You're not going to, if someone sends you a spam message like, I can get you 20 million followers if you just do this one thing, you're going to be like, nah, I'm good. I don't need you. I don't believe that. Or, I just got a message from your guides. Click this link and I can hook you up. We ignore those. We're still getting messages. It's still a message one way or another. So how can you acknowledge and treat your inner critic like a telemarketer? How can you treat it like a spam message that ain't real? Because that's all this is a message that's not real. We decipher messages that aren't real all the time. We just don't pay attention to the messages in our head. We don't acknowledge that it's not us speaking and acknowledge that it's something else. Because when we start doing that, it's easy for us to treat these thoughts that our inner critic has as a telemarketer, as a spam message, as a bot. It's just another bot that's in your head that, has a really good game, like a really good game. So that has helped me. Like whenever I'm able to decipher the difference, and I won't lie, it's not always easy to decipher the difference between my inner critic voice and my own voice. But when I'm able to decipher and I'm aware and I become more aware and I'm actually listening for it, I show up differently. I'm able to kind of do what I call the stop, drop, and roll. I'm like, okay, stop. That wasn't my voice. That was Karen speaking. I got you, Karen. I see you trying to come for me. Okay, I recognize your voice. I'm good. I'm gonna stick over here with this other game plan because I don't trust what you're saying to me. I understand you're suggesting that I'm fat, but I'm going to believe that I'm not fat. Thank you. No, thank you. Bye-bye. So that has worked for me. And I find that to be a great way to befriend the inner critic versus trying to fight and resist it, act like it doesn't exist. Because when you act like it doesn't exist, it just comes back stronger. Something else someone suggested to me, and I did it, and I thought it was kind of off the wall of a project or exercise to kind of work on befriending the inner critic, but it actually kind of worked for me, was creating a self-critic job description. And I know that sounds so crazy, but just bear with me for a minute as I walk you through this. So think about it. Your self-critic, your inner critic has been having this role in this job for quite some time. So it is mad skilled. And so why not get a job description so you understand everything about it? What is the inner critic's primary responsibility? What is its duties? What is its qualifications and skills? Once you're able to really investigate and understand the role and what the inner critic does, it will help you recognize when, again, going back to the first thing I was talking about, it will help you recognize when it's showing up. It'll help you recognize when it's not your voice speaking. And so I'm going to play a little game here today. Today I was like, I wanted to share my job description for my inner critic. And, I put this together pretty quick, but, I feel like it was a pretty decent job description. My inner critic is, is very, very skilled and expertise in its skills. So if I had to think about it, okay, the primary responsibilities of the inner critic, and this is the part where you're talking about the critic's primary purpose for being a part of your life. So when I thought about my critic's primary purpose of being in my life, I was like, my inner critic's primary purpose is to be in charge of giving Danielle ideas to stay stuck, unfulfilled and in her lane at all costs by yelling at her, labeling her as silly, stupid, and all the other different things, being condescending towards her, being the sounding alarm for the slightest hint of any remote possibility of shame, losing of status, influence, love, power, avoiding all embarrassment and any form of rejection. Basically, brainstorming new ideals and working with others who wish Danielle harm to implement them, and making sure at all costs, once again, to keep Danielle safe and comfortable at all times. That's responsibility. That's mine. Maybe yours is, it's just to keep you safe and comfortable at all times, or it's to motivate and punish you in order to keep you in check. It could be many different things, but I encourage you to think about what is your inner critic's responsibilities. Next thought I had was like, okay, what are my inner critic's duties? And the duties are specific ways in which the critic usually tries to meet its responsibilities. And so I thought about mine, and I was like, how does he or she, well, it's a she, I'm not going to play myself because it sounds like my voice, so it's a she. How do they go about, trying to find ways to meet the responsibilities? So I thought about it. So my inner critic likes to, its job is to, or its duties are to protect Danielle by blocking joy and compassion from others. She set reminders that connecting with others and finding love will lead to disasters. Trusting others will also lead to disasters. Another one was enhance relationships by reminding Danielle that she's only conditional worth and will be okay as long as she only acts how others think she should act. Identifies potential deficits in Danielle and blows them up before logic can even jump in. If another thing, so those were mine. So we'll go back to the example of yours. So if yours is kind of like to keep you safe and whatever, maybe one of your duties is to avoid people at all costs so you're not hurt, or to do everything perfectly to avoid feeling like you're a failure or sabotaging personal and career growths. So those were some of the duties that I came up with. But then the other part, which kind of had me kind of like, dang, my inner critic is literally, should be like a 6-figure job plus. There's the qualification and the skills. And those are the things that the critic is good at doing, and it makes them right for the job. So my inner critic skills and qualifications were, my inner critic's a mind reader. Has to be obsessive behavior, loves being right, connecting with the nervous system, repetitive, brilliant safety strategist, strong-willed, quick wit, analytical, able to speak in the same tone as Danielle's voice, without being detected, experience in blocking chakras, skilled at interrupting meditations, which I really hate, honestly. Great at fixing things, self-motivated, a go-get-her mentality. Not a go-getter, but a go-get-her mentality. And available at all hours. My inner critic is all those things. My inner critic, once I created this job description for my inner critic, I was like, dang, she be showing up at all hours. She's mad skilled. And so me trying to fight her doesn't make sense, because maybe I'm not as skilled, and maybe that's inner critic talking about me not being that skilled as her. But nonetheless, my inner critic is really skilled. It's very qualified. So me fighting something or someone that is very skilled, qualified in doing its job may not be the best look. So again, how can I go about befriending her? In creating this job description for me, it really helped me diffuse the power of the inner critic. It also helped me realize, it also diffused the power of me thinking that I can we're just going to silence it. I'm going to fight it through and I'm going to win because I've done all this healing work and kumbaya, it's going to work. Nah, boo. It's not necessarily going to work. You need to realize that fighting your inner critic is not a good look. And so this really helped me to look at my inner critic from more of being an observer versus looking at it from an outside perspective versus kind of looking at it as I'm in it and I can't see what's really going on, and realizing that, again, it's not a good look to fight your inner critic. So then from there, I decided to think about it. I'm like, okay, I created a job description for my inner critic. Okay, so how can I focus in on utilizing that job description to embrace my inner critic? And then it gave me the idea to think about, well, why don't I create a coworker? I mean, like, maybe the inner critic doesn't need to work alone, so I'll create a coworker. I'll call the coworker, naming it the supporter, I don't know, Maya. I like the name Maya. That's my fake name. But giving the supporter a name, giving it a name of, maybe a name of, someone who's important to you. I can give my inner critic the name of my cousin Beverly. She's no longer here, but she was a sound voice, and I know that she would not steer me wrong. And so I could call, my inner critic's, new coworker who is supportive and who has a positive outlook on things, my cousin's name, because again, I can relate her speaking great things into me and not speaking negative things and saying that I'm not worthy, I'm fat, I'm not enough, and all these different things. She would say the exact opposite. So maybe giving your supporter a name of someone who means a lot to you may be something that's a good look as well. But creating a job description, just like you did for your inner critic, for your supporter, and making sure to include in both job descriptions that these two must work together. So when the inner critic is coming out, dun, 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 here comes the supporter in telling you the opposite, telling you how amazing you are. Your body is amazing. You are so smart. You are doing amazing things. You are gifted. You are worthy just because you breathe. Don't listen to the inner critic. It ain't got nothing on you. So finding ways to almost trick your mind. And I feel like it's not easy all the time, but I feel like creating the steps and repeatedly doing it will help within time, and being patient with yourself. So I'm curious to see if anyone does the job description for the inner critic. And if you do, let me know. Send me a copy of yours. We can compare the difference between your inner critic and mine. Maybe I may get another skill set that my inner critic has from looking at yours. So I'm curious to see someone else's job description for their inner critic, because they're out there and they're doing their thing. So why not make sure that you're noting it, recognizing it, being aware of it, and being able to see what's you and what's not you. Something that I've heard other people talk about, and it kind of goes back to me saying befriending your inner critic, is literally creating it as a friend, finding a way to look at it from the perspective as maybe not your best friend, but maybe it's a frenemy. When you're frenemy, you kind of get to know its habits, to get to know its routines. Like, when is it showing up? Why is it triggered? Is it triggered when you're hangry? Is it triggered when you're tired? When is it the loudest? When is it the softest? What are the main themes that it has? Are there any variations to those themes? What are the different things? So making sure you're understanding and listening and getting curious about what is the inner critic all about? What is it kind of trying to talk about? Talk to your inner critic as you would talk to a friend. Notice the difference in your tone. You wouldn't talk to a friend in a way that is, I would hope you would not talk to a friend in a way that's degrading or berating. You wouldn't talk to a child that way either. So talk to your inner critic like you would talk to a younger child. Because at the end of the day, your inner critic isn't out here to hurt you. Its goal isn't to hurt you. You notice in my job description, I didn't say, at least I don't think I said, no part of my inner critic's job description is to hurt me. Its job, its role, its duties, its qualifications is to keep you safe. And when you come from that mindset that a friend is trying to just keep you safe, you're not going to treat it poorly, but you're trying to understand, even though in them keeping you safe, it may be an odd way. And you're like, I don't understand why you're coming at me this way. But I get that you're not being malicious. I get that you're not trying to hurt me. So if your inner critic is not trying to hurt you, how can you find another way to befriend it? How can you be compassionate towards your inner critic? How can you be like, I get you're only trying to keep me safe, and I appreciate you. I appreciate you, and I thank you for the care that you give me. I know that you only have good intentions, but at this moment, I do also recognize that I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to follow your advice. I love you, but I'm in control. We're cool, but I'm in control. Let your inner critic know that I love you. I have love for you. I don't have any ill intentions towards you. I know you don't have any ill intentions towards me, and we can work together. And it's only through working together with your inner critic that really you're going to be able to find a way to make a difference in how it shows up in your life. Because when you fight it and ignore it, it shows up in ways of you being in the trance of unworthiness. It has you not realizing that when you think that you are good, you are not good, because you aren't able to recognize the voice. You're not able to be able to acknowledge when it's showing up. Awareness is key. Like befriending your inner critic and finding ways to really work with your inner critic. The number one thing is awareness. Number two is patience, because this isn't a one and done. Oh, I wrote this job description. Good. I'm done for the day. I am perfectly set for the rest of my life. No, it doesn't work that way. This is consistent work. And when you aren't able to put in the work to pay attention consistently, it's almost like being an alcoholic. You have to work at it every single day. If you aren't working at it every single day or every week, it's going to creep back up, and the addictions of I'm not worthy, I'm horrible, I'm not enough, you're fat, you're ugly, you're poor, you'll never be good enough, you never will be successful, whatever, all those things will come up. So being patient with yourself, being aware, but also being persistent in doing the work. And that comes with repeatedly doing the work. Making it a habit to talk to yourself, to talk to your inner critic, to be curious about it. One idea would be to maybe write down every time you hear the inner critic's voice. That may help you to start recognizing, well, this is my voice and this is the inner critic's voice. I saw someone, I know someone who acts like their inner critic is like on vacation. I thought that was a little silly. One of my friends says that, and she's like, yeah, I totally act like it's on vacation. So when I needed to go away for a bit, I'm like, okay, so I'm sending you to Tahiti. You can be with the cutest guys. You're in an all-inclusive location. The weather is amazing. You're having a great time. You are relaxed. You don't need to be with anyone else. This is time for you to be alone. That doesn't work for me. It may work for you. That didn't work for me. For me, I need to be more realistic with myself. I need to be able to acknowledge, be patient, be curious, and try to find ways to remind myself that it's okay not being okay, and I don't have to be perfect, and this other voice really is not mine. There's a difference between me and the inner critic. We may live in the same body. We may breathe the same air, but we are two different people living two different lives. And I have the choice to pick which life I want to live. I can choose to follow the advice of the inner critic, or I can choose to follow my own advice. And when you're able to come to terms with the difference between the two voices and the two people, and that's why naming your inner critic is so key, you show up differently. So next week, I am going to be talking more about practical, technical ways to actually calm the inner critic. Not silence, not ignore, but literally things that you physically can do and that have I've been doing and have been working on that have helped me, and studies have shown that it works, that it helps to calm the inner critic. And I just feel like we live in a society that's so hard on us, but that we also have this voice in us that is even harder. And as a person of color, as a woman, it's just time to stop fighting all these things and finding a way to work through it instead of working against it. And that's where you'll get your strength. I love you. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Ciao. Thanks for joining us this week on the Hello Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellowellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hello Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hello Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.